If you've been on the internet for any amount of time, you've probably seen this meme before.
I wonder what's for dinner.
It's a classic meme that originates from the Zelda CDI game Faces of Evil. However, despite this widespread meme being a classic, sometimes resurrecting itself ironically out of the bowels of the 6-7 infested AI-driven modern meme era, we never really get a concrete answer as to what was for dinner. So I wonder, what was for dinner? I tried looking in the most obvious place to look, the original CDI games. Since I don't own a CDI, I opted just to look up on wikis and scour all the cutscenes in both Zelda's CDI games. Nothing. There are some hints. Link does say that in that game, he is so hungry, he could eat an Octorok.
Oh boy! I'm so hungry, I could eat an Octorok!
However, I don't think this is the answer we're looking for. It is much more likely that this is a figure of speech, and that people don't actually eat Octoroks in Hyrule. For one, it is extremely similar to the saying, "I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse." Furthermore, in the newer Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom games, using an Octorok tentacle in any recipe will create dubious food, which the Link in that game will find disgusting. That, and in those games, Octorok tentacles and eyeballs are not part of any known Hyrulean recipe. Octorok parts will make any dish dubious, and you will find an Octorok tentacle in your next meal if you don't like and subscribe. There was a fan theory that King Harkinian had brisket for dinner. However, its argument is shaky. It's very clear that it was just a meme post posted on a forum. Another possible answer is seafood paella. There's a side quest in Breath of the Wild titled What's for Dinner, and the reward is a plate of seafood paella. King Harkinian would definitely have the means and funds to have seafood paella for dinner. But this piece of evidence is part of a different game, and as we all know, the Zelda timeline is a huge clusterfuck. I slowly began to lose hope, thinking I would never find out what King Harkinian would have for dinner before setting off to Gamelon to help Duke Auntlet. And then I had a realization. Creatives often pull from outside sources to fuel their works of art. Nintendo is no different. There had to be a real-life culture that Nintendo and Philips had pulled from to create this iteration of King Harkinian. I found that his robes closely matched Byzantine chalmis and European robes. The Byzantine Empire lasted from years 330 to 1453. This matters for the dinner, because we're getting closer. Back in days of old, kings and emperors would march into battle with their troops. Before they would leave, they would have a traditional meal that consisted of roast pork or game, with a side of fine wheat bread, and to drink, seasoned wine. At first, I thought I finally had my answer. King Harkinian had roast pork or game, fine wheat bread, and seasoned wine, since that was what was traditionally given to Byzantine emperors before a large campaign. Then I thought about what specifically he said. I wonder what's for dinner.
I wonder what's for dinner.
I wonder. As if he didn't already know beforehand. If this was a traditional meal given before large-scale campaigns, wouldn't King Harkinian have some kind of idea since he was going into a war zone? I had to keep looking. King Harkinian's robes also could be inspired by a traditional medieval European royal garb, namely France and England, who usually had a choice of multiple different meats such as venison, swan, and peacock, often served within pies. Interesting. It is completely possible that if these pies were cooked beforehand, King Harkinian could be verbally wondering what he would like for dinner. Some people do this. They ask, I wonder what I want for dinner. Sure, that's not his exact wording, but some people do that all the time. Maybe King Harkinian has an idea as to what was for dinner, but since there were different options, maybe he was just verbalizing his indecision. We need to take into consideration that he was going onto a ship as well. Naval travel in medieval times was not easy, especially considering that they did not have many methods for food preservation, other than salting and drying meats. So, a lot of kings need to eat high-calorie meals such as pottage or thick stew with root vegetables. This stew was crammed with oats and bread to fit as many carbs and calories into the meal as possible. After all, these were often month-long, sometimes year-long voyages, and food on a ship couldn't last forever. They had to account for the possibility of food running out. So, we already have a few answers to this question. What was for dinner? Well, from my research, it was likely a choice of roasted pork, game, swan, pottage, stew, and fine bread with wine. King Harkinian definitely had access to beer, but it seems like from the in-game cutscenes, he is much more of a wine man. Or maybe he just had lots of spaghetti.
Lots of spaghetti!
Lots of spaghetti.
Lots of spaghetti!
Huh. Spaghetti was not an uncommon meal amongst Italian nobles. Although it lacked the traditional tomato sauce we have today, it was usually flavored with spices, butter, and cheese. English and French kings would have spaghetti, but it was a very rare occasion, since spaghetti was a labor-intensive dish that was considered exotic. So maybe, just maybe, he had lots of spaghetti.